Dysfunctional breathing does not just happen out of the blue, right? There is always a cause and effect. So what is it that's messing up so many people's breathing today, right? The statistics are pretty alarming. From 10% of the general population to 90% of athletes, right? 30 to 50% of people with asthma, up to 80% of generalized anxiety disorder. Whatever the numbers you look at, we have a problem, right? Today I want to talk to you about the 3 most common causes that I see of dysfunctional breathing. My name's Campbell, I'm a physiotherapist, I'm a breathwork educator, and I work day in, day out on assessing and treating breathing. Now, the prevalence of dysfunctional breathing, in my opinion, is grossly underestimated. Given the fact that we have no clear tool for diagnosing, right? We don't have clear criteria. It's hard to say what is or what isn't dysfunctional breathing, or who has or who doesn't. But instead of us kind of getting lost in the weeds of classification, let's talk about why. Why do so many people have downright shitty breathing? The first problem I see is posture, right? When we look at the mechanics of breathing, to put it simply, breathing conforms to the body. Today as a population, we've never been more sedentary. We've never sat more. We've never spent more time hunched over our phones staring down into our laps. And what happens as a result of this is our breathing adapts. You don't believe me, right? Drop your head down, round your shoulders, round your back. Now try and take a nice big deep breath. And just kind of notice how it feels in your body. Now sit up tall, right? Open the chest and the shoulders, gaze forward. Now take a deep breath. Feels different, doesn't it, right? Of course it does, right? Breathing in its purest form is a movement practice. Do it from a poor position and you'll get poor results. And so as a physio, I see a lot of postural issues. And as a breathwork specialist, I see what those postural issues do to someone's breathing. And as a result, their health, right? A breath is kind of like saying a calorie is a calorie, but it's not, right? Sure, a calorie is a measurement of energy, right? Is the same whether it comes from high fructose corn syrup or from broccoli. But beyond the measurement of energy, there are hugely different outcomes in the body, right? There is information in that calorie. And the same thing is taking a shallow breath into the upper chest driven by the muscles of the neck gives us a very different outcome than a breath that's pulled down into the lower lobes of the lung, right? That's driven by the diaphragm. The information carried by that breath is very different in what it does to the body. So poor posture is one of the primary culprits when we look at why so many people breathe so poorly. Number 2 is stress, right? We have to understand when it comes to breathing, the impact that stress has, right? Now, stress is a term that everyone seems to have their own interpretation of. Being stressed impacts our breath. Full stop, end of story, right? Breathing impacts the state of the nervous system. And so the state of the nervous system impacts everything else. Think of this, right? Someone wakes up, they roll over, they check social media, or they're into their work email. Stress. Right? They rush to get themselves or their kids ready for school or for work. Their mind's all over the place. They throw down a coffee on an empty stomach. Stress. There's traffic on the way to work. Stress. Right? They're sat behind a screen or a desk for 8 hours. Stress. They watch or listen to the news, stress. They're over-caffeinated, underslept, stress. They go from a sedentary existence at work all day to high-intensity exercise with little to no preparation or recovery, stress. I could go on, right? The world is very different today than it once was, and this impacts our nervous system. Instead of us being this like small tribe of connected individuals who collectively dealt with these intermittent bouts of stress and threat, we are continuously connected to 7 billion others and the problems and pain of 7 billion others, the expectations of how we should be living. That's pretty stressful, right? This constant state of stress has a direct impact on our breathing by changing the set point in our brain, right? It's like an alarm system that's on the verge of ringing 24/7. So stress is a big problem when it comes to breathing. Third and finally is I want to point out one of the most commonly overlooked causes of dysfunctional breathing, growing a baby. Right? I'm talking about pregnancy. Of all the incredible changes a woman's body goes through from conception to delivery, I want to highlight 2 important changes, physiology and mechanics. Right? Progesterone rises dramatically through pregnancy, and this makes a woman's brain more sensitive to CO2. Now, this isn't only relevant during pregnancy. Progesterone also rises during the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle. And it is not only relevant to women, progesterone is a hormone that is present in the male body as well. But essentially, the part of the brain that controls breathing becomes more sensitive due to the rise of progesterone. This impacts everything from energy levels to emotional reactivity to stress capacity or resilience. The second thing that happens is oxygen consumption goes up during pregnancy. Now, when we move from physiology to mechanics, right, during pregnancy, the rib cage, the abdomen actually change shape. And the diaphragm is forced upwards about 5 centimeters. This directly impacts breathing patterns, right? Now, these changes occur over 40 weeks. Is it any wonder that breathing is disrupted in the postpartum phase, right? Add in labor and delivery, and we start to see why so many new moms have dysfunctional breathing patterns, which contributes to feelings of stress, anxiety, overwhelm, and fatigue. Finally, let's add in the constant state of vigilance and threat detection, right, which is the sympathetic nervous system, that comes from being in charge of this new little vulnerable life form. Right? Most mothers aren't taught how to restore their breathing to its natural optimal state. Right? In fact, they aren't taught much about their breath at all. But they're left with the compensations that are no longer necessary that push them further into states of stress and anxiety. I think it's a massive disservice to mothers when they aren't educated about the changes that occur to their breathing, right? And how that may show up for them in the postpartum phase, right? Now, there are far more causes of dysfunctional breathing than these three things, but these are the lowest hanging fruit. These are the ones that we can all work to support, and in doing so, help more people feel better, right? When we look to the causes of dysfunctional breathing rather than the symptoms of dysfunctional breathing, we're far more equipped to deal with the problem and start to create solutions. And so helping people address how they move their body, right? The impacts that living in a chronic state of stress has on their breath and their body. And for mothers, helping them understand the changes that happen to their breath through pregnancy can do a whole lot to help reduce the prevalence of dysfunctional breathing, right? And when we do that, we greatly impact people's overall physical, mental, and emotional well-being, right? Breathing is simple, but it's incredibly important. And so I hope this helps you to understand some of the causes and then also hopefully some of the solutions, right? Because it doesn't take a lot of us starting to, number one, become aware of our own breathing patterns and perhaps the breathing patterns of the people that we're working with. And then number two, starting to give specific restorative practices to help bring breathing back to its natural, optimal state.